Hello again, my most amazing artists. Today, we are looking at the artwork of Kelsey Montague. She is a street artist who makes these beautiful murals. We are going to be creating work inspired by her type of street art and using the hashtag #WhatLiftsYou. I want you to think a little bit more about what that term means to you. Yes, literally we're talking about lifting because a lot of her murals are pictures of wings, right? But we're also talking about what kind of things, brighten your day or heighten your spirit. What kind of things encourage you and inspire you? What kind of things uplift you and make you feel happy? What's something that someone does for you when you're not having a good day that makes it better? Or vice versa. What can you do for another person that makes them feel a little bit more special? So I want you to think about those kind of things as you're working on your project today. We are going to be creating feathers. And these feathers are all going to be a part of our mural at our school. So we are going to use these to create wings that will go behind us, and we will all be able to take pictures and pose. And we might even, with my at-home students, we might even be able to use this as a green screen, and we'll talk more about that. But we will put ourselves in this work of art and interact with it. So we're going to collaborate and make one big piece to make some beautiful wings, and they're going to be giant. So in order to make our feathers, we want to think a little bit about what those things are that make us lifted, right? How do we stay lifted? What kind of things make us feel heightened, loved, joy, all of those things, okay? And while we're doing that, we are going to think about how can we draw them as symbols or use them as words in our artwork, okay? So in order to do this, we are going to need a piece of paper, a pencil, and probably some crayons. But if you want to use something else like colored pencils, you could do that. I would say probably don't use markers. We want this to be cohesive, so we want to make this out of crayons or colored pencils. But if you only have markers, then that's okay. Don't be afraid to experiment and see what you can come up with, okay? So I'm going to show you how I start my feather. Okay, so here I have my piece of paper, and notice it is vertical. It is up and down, okay? And that's pretty important because I'm going to draw a line down the center of my paper. So I'm making a vertical line. Again, my paper is turned tall. And I'm almost going to the ends of the paper. I want it to be nice and large, okay? And I'm going to come beside that and create a line that's almost parallel down here at the bottom, almost like I'm drawing a really skinny triangle, okay? And once I have this line down the center of my paper, and remember, if I'm going too quick, you can pause and rewind, I'm going to create this shape. But if I make it too round, it's going to look more like a leaf than a feather. Feathers are pretty narrow, so we want to keep it thin, keep it close to the sides. Watch what I do. About 2 finger spaces away from the bottom, I'm going to come up the quill, and I'm going to curve, go up, and I'm getting just a little bit closer to that center line, up to like a point or a rounded tip, your choice. So I'll do the same thing on the other side. Again, careful not to go out too far. We want to keep it in close so that it doesn't look like a leaf, it looks like a feather. Okay, so now I have a shape that looks like this, but this still isn't quite right. When we look at a feather, or we observe a feather in real life, we might notice these beautiful diagonal lines, these lines that kind of point in almost like a V shape, right? That gives the feather really nice texture. So we're going to create that texture, but we're going to use patterns like these repeating lines, shapes, or colors. So in order to create that look, I could create sections like this. Remember to draw light until it's right in case you make a mistake. Okay, I could draw lines like this, or and this is something I would encourage you to try, make a narrow V shape, kind of pointing downward towards the middle at an angle. We want to make this diagonal V. Okay, and you can kind of place them randomly. You don't want them to get too wide. Make them narrow, and they don't need to come all the way in. You could potentially go all the way in. Okay, but you want to be careful you're not going to cut your feather either. Okay, so I have something that looks like this. Now, I'm going to come back with my crayon and any images that I want to include. So maybe I decide to draw like a treble clef because I really like music. Or maybe I decide to draw a donut. Sometimes donuts can make us happy, right? So maybe I draw something like that. Now on our ones at school, we didn't color this in because we came back with a paintbrush and filled those areas in with watercolor paints. If you have watercolor paints at home, you could try this as well. But if not, then you can just color your shapes in. Just be sure to use your very best craftsmanship, because if you come to bring this to the school, we want to make sure that since everyone's going to be posing with our artwork, we're doing our very best job. Another thing I could think about adding are just repeating lines, shapes, colors, or textures. So if I wanted to, I could create some repeating wavy lines to create a nice texture and pattern. And I'm just going to work my way all the way around until the entire feather is filled with color, whether it be with just crayons or with crayons and watercolors. Then I need to come out and cut this. When I'm cutting, I cut away from myself and I follow the shape. So I'm going to use my other hand to turn my paper and cut around that edge. Now, I also want to trim out the V shapes, but I don't want to go into the bottom and turn my scissors back out. That's a really easy way to rip your paper, and we don't want it to tear. We want a nice complete feather. So I'll set these pieces aside to go in the trash. And here, I'm going to cut into the V shape. Cut to the bottom, and then do the same thing on the opposite side. So I cut in and stop when I get to the bottom. Cut in, just like that. Okay? And if you decide that you don't have enough of these V's, you could come and make some where there aren't any. Okay? You decide how many you want to add. Just don't go too crazy. You want to see some of the edge of the feather too. Otherwise, it's going to look like a saw blade. Okay? And then I'm just going to do that all the way around. Wherever I have these guys, I cut in, I cut in. I don't need to go to the bottom and turn my scissors back out. That would be really challenging. And just make sure that you clean up after yourself. So now, I have a really nice feather, okay? And I want to make sure that on the back, I include some information. So it's important to put our name, teacher's name, and grade on this paper. So I'm going to write my name, my teacher's name, and my grade. Just like that. Okay? I hope you have fun making this project. I hope that you definitely find things that do lift you up, and that this can help get you in a more positive mindset and in a really good mood. Okay? So what we want to do is, if we are creating this feather and we're going to bring it to school, it needs to be turned in by November 6th. I'll say that again. If we want this to be a part of the bigger mural here at the school, we have to make sure our work gets turned in by November 6th. There will be a box out front of the school that you can drop your work off in if you want yours to be included in the display. If not, just submit it to me on Canvas and that will work too. All right, all that being said, I hope you have an amazing time creating your Kelsey Montague inspired feather, and I can't wait to see them all combine together to make our beautiful lifting wings. See you soon, artists.